Welcome to the Etobicoke-Lakeshore podcast. And my name is Mike. Right there is the publisher of a wonderful publication right here in town called the Etobicoke-Lakeshore Press. Hey, Roger, how's it going?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you, Mike. How are you?
Good. And look at this. We're almost through it, man. The most
We almost did it.
the most momentous 2020 experience is almost over from many perspectives. And throughout the year, I want to thank you for being able to join social distancing and keeping us all in the loop and keeping this podcast going. So hats off to you and happy holidays, my friend.
Oh, likewise, Mike. Yeah, I was thinking just in advance of logging on to our podcast today that it's been a little while since we've done one of these. I think we've both been pretty busy, but I recall to sort of springtime when the pandemic hit and we went into lockdown, you and I were doing these 2 or 3 times a day.
In fact, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the podcast has become, a regular fixture in my media mix. And I just wanted to thank you for a wonderful year.
Also, while I have a moment, just to say to the guests that have joined us, what an incredible group you are. The things that we talked about and the way that you love this community just makes the show so much fun to do, and it's great wind in our sails every time that you join us. So if you were on the show with us and you shared with us, thank you so much for that. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. It is all about the Etobicoke-Lakeshore area and the wonderful businesses there, the incredible people that you'll find in the community, and it's dovetailed by a magazine that's been here for many years called the Etobicoke-Lakeshore Press. So I'll recommend you pick that up. Subscribe to this show anywhere you listen to it, and we would be delighted to hear from you at any point. As always, we have a guest. And, really to kind of close off what's been a difficult year, Roger, I have to say this guest is the perfect wrap-up on our year. Who's our guest today, Roger?
Oh, I could not have said that better, Mike. Our guest today is James Maloney. He's the Member of Parliament for Etobicoke-Lakeshore. No stranger to the magazine and certainly not to this podcast. We had James on in the thick of the pandemic back in the springtime. So we're really happy to bring James back on the podcast. And he's actually on the cover of the December edition of the Etobicoke-Lakeshore Press, the theme for which is 2020, a year in review. So without further ado, James, welcome.
Roger, how are you? Mike, good to hear your voice. Guys, listen, thanks for having me on. I'm doing well personally, but you guys said it I couldn't have put it better myself. It's been a year we want to see the end of as soon as possible, because it's been a tough one for everybody.
It's an experience that we seem to have gotten through together. And when I look back now on, it's tough because we're still in the midst of it, of course. But as I look back on it now over the last several months, and even as we had a little bit open up in this neighborhood, the way that the businesses and the community handled themselves was really warm. There was a message of supporting local. There was a message of staying safe that was well respected. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Well, look, before I answer that, I just want to say, part of that is what you guys are doing, because during this whole thing, and we've been, sort of in and out of various iterations of lockdown or shutdown or restricted movement, things like this podcast and the magazine are so important to getting the word out there and keeping people in touch with each other, because there's a lot of people who are, they're living alone and they're not supposed to go anywhere. So it's really tough. And these things are all critical. But look, I mean, our community, one of the things I say all the time is it's an amazing community because people identify with their neighborhood. It's not, we are living in the biggest city in Canada, but if you talk to somebody, they're going to tell you, I live in Mimico, or I live in Alderwood, or I live in New Toronto, and they're incredible. They say it with such pride, and there's good reason for that, obviously, but they're proud of all of these communities, and they've really come together during this whole process, during all of the different stages, and it's been tough. I talk to business owners every day. And it is, the first part of this back in March, April, May were incredibly difficult when we had to shut down completely. The summer was a little bit better, we were blessed with having good weather, so some businesses could make a go of it. But here we are again in lockdown, and I talk to them, and they're doing everything they can. And I just, I can't say enough about our small business owners here in Etobicoke, because they have all stepped up, with one notable exception, which has been on the news a lot a couple of weeks ago. But and done the right thing. And kudos to them. And it's not easy, because people's livelihoods are at stake here. And the amount of people who, that call me daily, weekly, not about their own problems, but to ask me how they can help other people. And it's heartwarming. It really is. And it's, it's business owners or individuals. Where can I go? How can I help the food bank? How can I help small business owners? People have started up back in the spring delivery services for takeout to help some of the restaurants get going. You guys know all these stories, and it's amazing. So we live in a truly, truly amazing place. And it's, if people didn't know that before, they've certainly learned it through this, because tough times bring out the good in people, and there's a lot of good people in this community, and it's remarkable.
Indeed, yeah. And we could say that about just about any community, that we're immersed in this one, and that we feel that way. It even lends itself to us getting through this further, and continuing on to help one another, because it's had a good result. So just remarkable. This as we kind of wrap up the year, and with your presence in Ottawa and keeping an eye on things from that perspective, how do you feel going into 2021 with regard to the pandemic itself? And is there a message that you could send out that would be important at this time?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a critical message too, because as bad as it's been, people are, and I think all of us are like this. You sort of get to the end of your rope, and people are tired of this, of course, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, the vaccines are starting to be delivered now. We have one vaccine. Canada was the third country in the world to approve the Pfizer vaccine. The Moderna vaccine will be approved. It's imminent, and the deliveries are starting to come in, but it's going to take time. So going into 2021, there's every reason to be optimistic. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel, to use a tortured cliche, but it's true. But we can't let down what we've been doing all along that got us through this. We have to continue, following the protocols. People have been told to wash their hands more times in the last 6 months than they have in their entire life. But in social distancing, if we can continue doing this until the springtime, we will get through this, and then we can get back to a semblance of a normal life. But, so don't give up hope. There's every reason to be positive. Things are being done to try to make it easier for individuals and for businesses. But if we can just hang in there for a while longer, then we're going to be on the other side of this thing.
Now, Roger, you brought this to my attention. And by the way, O'Tumanieri, a very storied Irish immigrant family to Canada.
Little known, but
yeah, very little known. But you brought this to my attention about a very special motion. Roger, tell us what you know about this, and then let's ask James about it.
Well, it was interesting. Yeah, I was just thinking about when the pandemic hit, we kind of lost our St. Paddy's Day. And when you talk about a light at the end of the tunnel, and we talk about springtime, one of the things to look forward to when you live in a climate such as ours is St. Paddy's Day, and that being March. And James, I know that you're very passionate about our Irish heritage. I was wondering if you can talk to us about your recent private members bill.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. I'm thrilled to do it, in fact. So every time a new parliament begins, they put together a calendar of private members' business, and every member of parliament, they do it by draw. So they pull the names out of the hat, and it's 1 to 338 for private members' business. And when your number comes up, you can introduce a piece of a bill or a motion of your choosing. The reality is, though, over the course of even a 4-year parliament, they only get to about, if they get to 100, that's quite remarkable. And out of that 100, very, very few of them actually ever get passed. A lot of people use it as an opportunity to, raise awareness to an issue, knowing full well that nobody's going to vote for it. But I am proud of my Irish heritage, and we have a extraordinarily Irish community in Canada, and a big Irish community too. I mean, 14% of Canadians identify themselves as having Irish heritage. So almost 5 million people. So I introduced a private member's motion to declare the month of March as Irish Heritage Month. And you mentioned St. Patrick's Day, and I love St. Patrick's Day as much or more as the next guy, but this motion is not about green beer and green hats and the like. It's about the historical contribution that the Irish have made to building this country. Thomas D'Arcy McGee was one of the founding fathers of Canada. And the list goes on and on. Brian Mulroney, Paul Martin all had Irish heritage. Justin Trudeau has Irish heritage, believe it or not. So the list is endless. So I did this just to recognize, that contribution. And it's, but I like to remind people it's not about March, it's about the other 11 months of the year too. And, but March, of course, being the appropriate month to recognize it. So, it was a long time coming. This parliament, after the last election, I drew number 19, so I was lucky enough to get it before parliament within the first year. Things got delayed because of the pandemic, and things were put on hold for a long time. But last Friday was my time up, so I put it before parliament, and it's being, the Conservatives spoke in favor of it, the Bloc spoke in favor of it, the NDP spoke in favor of it, the Greens, I think they have no choice but to speak in favor of it. But so it'll be up for second reading in March, and I hope to get it voted on then. Of course, there's this ever ongoing threat of an election because it is a minority parliament, and there's all sorts of posturing by all the opposition parties and everybody about the threat of an election. Which, just to be clear for anybody who's listening, I do not want an election anytime soon, and I don't believe anybody really does, because we have to get through this pandemic first and make sure that people's lives are disrupted as little as possible, and that should continue to be the focus. But having said that, you never know. So I hope to get it passed in March and onward to go. But the number of people have reached out from the Irish community, like it has deep meaning to them. It really does. I was chatting with a guy yesterday. You could see, I was outside and he was several feet away from me, of course. But the look on his face, you could see the emotion about how happy this made him. And that's why I did it. So.
Well, that's what it means to be Canadian. Is that welcome to Canada. Your heritage means so much that you would choose Canada means so much, and so in any community like that, I think it gives us all a little bit of pride as Canadians that we do it that way. And to be received by Canada as a community feels good, I'm sure.
Well, as I said in my speech on Friday, I said, people of Irish heritage they're proud of the country where they were born, and they're incredibly proud of the country they chose to live, and you're right. That's very Canadian.
It is. That's. I wish you all the best with that bill, and that it goes through. I think it would be a lot of fun. And of course, I should point out that you never once said that it eliminates green beer and big green fun hats at all.
I am in no way trying to discourage that behavior. Trust me. And Roger, you're right. I mean, because if you remember, it was March 13th, Parliament shut down, which was a Friday, ironically enough. And the following week, it was the day before St. Patrick's Day when we went into total lockdown. And being a good Irishman, I remember the date very well, but I remember it for obvious reasons, not just that. But so look, maybe through fate we will be emerging from this at around the same time in 2021, and we can have the best St. Patrick's Day ever. But we'll see. But as I said, we need to hunker down and keep doing what we're doing, and I'll say thank you again to all of the businesses and people in the community, because it's hard. I know how hard it is. There's a lot of programs that are available to business owners and individuals to try to help them get through this. And it's working. It's not perfect, but it's working, and it's helping a lot of people. And when the time comes that we open things up again, we'll be able to hit the ground running, which was the objective throughout.
One of the things that I've noticed in doing a bunch of different podcasts here in the homeless sector, for example, in the hospice sector, in the medical sector, a number of major pivots were made very quickly to save lives, to ease people's financial burden. As you point out, a number of programs were put in place, and of course they couldn't be perfect because we are making them up on the fly. This is not something that that you can prepare properly for on this scale. I'm curious about your perspective, James, on your view of all of that, and how there's some positivity that these pivots have made changes that maybe needed to be made for a long time. I noticed in Toronto alone, we housed over 1,000 people that otherwise might not have been housed, and I'm sure that's just a microcosm of what you've seen, probably.
No, I mean, look, you hit the nail on the head. When this happened in March and April, there was programs being rolled out, on the fly, if I could, and were they perfect? No. And did they have to be adapted along the way? Every single one of them almost did, but you had to get the money out the door because we went from full blast to full stop, and people's lives were turned upside down, and people were, they were no longer working. And what this pandemic did is it exposed a lot of problems that we have in our society that we knew were there, but weren't getting the attention that they needed. And we have a lot of problems with our social safety net, as we call it, and housing is a big one, really big one. I mean, you go talk to the guys down at the Daily Bread Food Bank here in Etobicoke, and they'll tell you because they see the front lines of this, where the people are coming from. And housing, people talk about how expensive it is to live in Toronto. Well, we're not talking about housing affordability. We're talking about having a roof over your head.
Right.
And there are thousands of people who couldn't afford the bare necessities. And when you suddenly put them out of work and they're not able to buy food, all of these things just become raw and exposed. So, our unemployment insurance system, was designed a long time ago based on an economy that at the time it worked. But you know what it's like now. So many people are self-employed, whether you want to call it the gig economy or whatnot. But take the entertainment industry. We have a massive footprint here in Etobicoke-Lakeshore, film, television, like thousands of people work in that industry. They're all self-employed. So, and they go from job to job to job, and the industry was booming. But when this all came to a standstill, there was nothing there for them. So programs like the CERB, had to be rolled out very quickly. The small business loans that were created for businesses to help get through and pay the rent, the wage subsidy, all these things rolled out very quickly. I can remember back in April when these things started rolling out going, oh my God, how are we going to do this so quickly? Ordinarily, it would take 2 years to roll out one of these programs, and there would be problems along the way. We managed to do it within weeks, simultaneously, 2 or 3 or 4 programs after the other. And was there problems? Yeah, we had to adapt, because when you roll it out that quickly, it's like, oh, you know what, we have to fix it. So here, I mean, at one point the income threshold for small businesses was 50 grand. But then you realize you go up and down the main streets here in Etobicoke, all of these small businesses are, the mom and pop shops, they're self-employed. They don't, they pay themselves at the end of the year if there's any money left. So they don't have these financial spreadsheets that, fit them into that. So we had to change it. So we lowered the numbers, we changed the program so that more people would be able to qualify. And we still do, but back then we were have a caucus. We would be on the phone every day at 5:00, all the MPs on the government side. Okay, what are you hearing on the ground? Okay, here's the problem I'm having with my businesses. Okay, so am I here. And then 4 days later, the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister would roll out an amendment to the program to try to make sure it fit. And a lot of people were hounded. But housing, which was your question, that is a big issue. And one of the, like, we rolled out the national housing strategy pre-pandemic, but during the pandemic, it, like everything else, just became so apparent what the problems were. And we've rolled out a number of programs, short term with the city, working with the city of Toronto. And I have to give kudos to John Tory, I'll tell you, because he's been working hand in hand with us on all of these things, making sure that these problems get fixed as quickly as possible. But we're now rolling out housing programs. 2 weeks ago, we rolled out something called the Rapid Housing Project.
Yes.
We're going to be, I was speaking to a group of Housing Now Toronto, it's called, Housing Now TO, yesterday. And there's examples of housing programs that were set up in October, and people are going to be living in them by Christmas. So it's this rapid housing initiative. So there's different approaches being taken to solve the problem. We're still far from the finish line, but we're working away at it.
By the way, that housing solution that you just referenced, very, very attractive housing that they're doing there. It's very cool.
I saw some, not mock-ups, but I saw the actual housing yesterday. It is. You're right. I thought those are very cool. Yeah.
It's really it's a great solution. And I will say this, everybody, especially when you've done broadcast a while, you can criticize the government easily because you're built to do that. I have a hard time doing that these days because I watched what CERB did to save businesses. You talked about the entertainment sector, for example, the film and production and all of that. I exist in that realm, and I watched CERB keep businesses moving. And that seems like one of these pivots that we, moving forward, would say, hold on a second. If we want to support small business, here's a way that might be more cost efficient to do it. So, where normally I could be like anybody, the government, I really am blown away with how we made these pivots and how many businesses have survived that otherwise would not have.
Yeah. No, look, and I by no stretch am I trying to say we got everything right. We didn't, but when you're doing things this rapidly, you're bound to make mistakes. And you're right. I mean, one of the things, positive things throughout this whole thing, the cracks are starting to emerge a little bit now. But all levels of government, regardless of party stripe, are like, all right, let's roll up our sleeves and solve these problems. Yeah. Stop, nagging each other about the petty things that we usually nag each other about. Some of that's starting to come back now, but. And it was inevitable, I suppose. But I'm hoping another permanent outcome of this is some of that stuff will disappear because nobody likes to hear it. If somebody's got a good idea, I don't care what political party you're with, I'm going to say it's a good idea, right?
Right.
And if we have a bad idea, I'm going to say, that's a really dumb idea. Like, let's rethink that. So, and if we can get to that place, even a little bit closer to that place, that will be a positive outcome. And but so many things, back to your point, we've had to do quickly, but there's going to be positive outcomes when this is over. You're right, because we're now taking a look at all of these different sectors and different programs, saying, okay, we gotta, change things so that they work for everybody again, because the world has changed. 10 years ago, nobody had cell phones. I now carry around 2 of them. I've got a personal one and my government one, but it's, that's the entire economy has changed scope, and it's going to continue changing, and we have to make other things adapt to fit them. So,
well, here we go into a new year. 'Tis the festive season for so many. Let's take an opportunity. Feel free to go and just send out a message to the community. We'd love to hear, a voice of positivity. Over to you, James.
Look, it's going to be, but I'm going to be positive, but look, this is going to be an unusual, difficult Christmas, and it's going to be one we always remember. I stood up in the House of Commons just before Halloween, and I said, look, this weekend is Halloween. Every kid remembers Halloween as a kid, but I don't remember one from the other. Every kid's going to remember this one. Let's make a positive experience so it's one they want to remember. Let's not talk about the things they can't do. Let's make it interesting. They're going to remember. I said, remember my mom and dad did that, So we need to take the same approach to Christmas. It's going to be challenging. We're not going to be able to visit family and friends the way we usually do, but there's Zoom and other technologies. Pick up the phone your mother, father, brother, sister, aunt, neighbors. Have some fun. Do a Zoom call. Do whatever. Let's make it a positive experience and get through this thing, because we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and let's make it one we look back on with some degree of fondness, even though it was a challenging time. Let's remember, what? We pulled up our socks and we got through this, and we actually had a good time doing it. But there's remember the people. There's a lot of people out there. So just think of them, try to help them, phone them, drop something off at their house. You know, they need us to be there for them.
Well, that's a really important message. We can be there for one another, no matter what the scenario.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, like I was talking to a friend of mine last night. He lives in Calgary. He always comes back to, he's single. He always comes back and spends Christmas here with his family. He's from Clinton, Ontario, but you know he's staying there by himself. That's, you know, his family. You know, they thought it better that he didn't come home, and he thought it made the smart decision not to come home. And there's going to be a lot of people like that.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, so think of them, and let's make it positive for all of those people too.
James, thanks so much for joining us today, giving us a little bit of the inside scoop. And, of course, it's always nice to hear that we're represented by somebody with the kind of heart that you have. And so I wish you the best this holiday season.
Well, listen, guys, thank you. And that's very kind of you to say, but I'll say it again. What you guys do is really important to the community because it gets the message out, positive message, and it brings people together. And that's what we need to do more than ever. So thank you.
We'll see you in the new year.
You bet.
Thank you so much.
Guys. My pleasure.
You know, what a delight having James on. You know, when you like a politician, it makes you suspicious of yourself, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's got to be like unlike most, almost every other politician.
I think so.
Because he's such a kind-hearted man. Like he's
right.
Not what you expect in the prototypical politician. So
no, and very much the same perspective on life that we all have right now. It's nice to humanize that at the government level. And here, look, we did what we could quickly, and we've had good results. And it's not just to hear the real human aspect of that is a big deal. So, Roger, let me take a minute and wish you and your family a wonderful, happy holiday, a wonderful Christmas, and a happy new year. You really did mess up 2021 on all of us. We have to blame somebody, you understand?
It's all your fault.
But we did get through it together, and I want to thank you for that. We've just become better friends in the community, you and I have a feeling that will carry us the rest of our days. So thank you for a wonderful year under tough times.
Oh man, thank you, Mike. Yeah, it's brought out the best in a lot of people. I think certainly brought us closer together, and I think we've done a lot to communicate positive, good vibes to the community.
Before we go, I want people to be able to buy this incredible apparel that you are wearing right now. You have some incredible stuff. You're wearing it right now, and it's Etobicoke based. I'm the guy moving to Etobicoke. Don't I get a welcome package with this? Where can people get this and tell us about it?
That is a great idea. I should get it in with local realtors, and they can gift it to their new clients. So it's Etobicoke Apparel Company, and the design for the Etobicoke series was inspired by the Humber Bay Bridge. So you can take a look at the various designs, all of which are celebrating Ontario, which really came about after the pandemic hit. And I thought, we all need to have pride in our province. And this was a way that it was an outlet for me to sort of express that. And I created a bunch of designs of places in Ontario that were special to me, and I hope are special to our listeners and our readers in the magazine. Apparelco.ca is the website, APPARELCO.ca. And you can purchase your Etobicoke apparel hoodies at Espresso Bar Namaste on Browns Line. It's in the same plaza as Il Paisano Pizza. I think most folks in Etobicoke will know that, just south of the new condo development there.
Okay, so there you go. And, of course, we'll put a link in the description of the show because it's really good quality stuff. I can tell by the video. Not that I have one in my possession, but I can tell by the video.
I think you want one.
I drop hints like elevators.
I'll have to ship one down to you, Mike.
All right. Well, listen, buddy, have yourself a wonderful holiday, and we will do this again bright and early, first of the new year. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll catch you then.